All right, so I guess we are live, and we actually have 4 people already in the session, so that's very cool. So hello everyone, and welcome to our final expert session 91. And my guest today is Laura Fullerton. But just before she introduces herself, I want to say thank you to our sponsors, the ones who make this possible. So VTEX, the e-commerce platform powering global retail experiences, and Hermeet, the platform that enables our global and virtual and hybrid events. I'll quickly introduce Laura today. So Laura Fullerton is the founder of Monk, a health and recovery company building smart code exposure products and experiences. She combines a creative and brand background with disciplined category building, turning code therapy from a niche practice into a scalable health business. Laura focuses on ritual, safety, and measurable behavior change as foundations for long-term adoption. Laura, just before you introduce yourself, there's always a controversial question. So the controversial question for you is, code exposure is uncomfortable by design. So are you building Monk around a genuine health need, or are you asking consumers to adopt discomfort before they truly understand the value? Um, I can't hear Laura. Gustavo, can you hear her? Something happened. Not sure if it's my audio. Yeah, you're on mute now. Uh,
Ooh.
yeah, brilliant. I can hear you
Yeah,
now.
have you got me
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry about that. So we are building Monk around a genuine health need, which is resilience. Like, I don't think in today's world we need more comfort and convenience. We just need to do hard things. And cold water therapy is such a phenomenal tool for all kinds of mental, physical, and emotional needs. And so, yeah, I think we are largely speaking to people who've already tried it and have fallen in love with it. But I think as it goes on and just becomes more mainstream, we will be asking people to suffer first and then understand later.
Well, I think suffering is the basis of a lot of things, right? So, well, it is true. Like, if you think of entrepreneurship, I don't think it's for everyone. There's a lot of suffering in the
Agreed.
process. So, right? So, if you don't embrace the process of suffering, I mean, it's so it makes sense. I love your perspective, Laura. So, just before we speak about Beauty Monk, I love speaking. Yeah, what shaped you? You know, why you're building what you're building? What led you uh, to where you are today? What's the story?
Yeah, I'd say what led me here, probably pure frustration. So, larger
Mhm.
context, I've always been really into health optimization, biohacking, which has just come from this desire. I just want to feel amazing every day. You know, when you wake up and you feel a bit groggy, I've always thought, why? Like, why is that? I just want to wake up and have so much energy. Anyway, one day I stumbled down this rabbit hole that ended up in the biohacking world. And
Mhm.
I have always hated being cold. So the irony now that I'm running Monk isn't lost on me. But I honestly, I just got bullied into doing this ice bath one day. I got invited to this breathwork and ice bath experience, and I went along to it thinking, oh, when they come to doing the ice bath bit, I'll just make an excuse. I'll go to the bathroom or something. And I ended up doing it. And it was a few hours afterwards. I remember just thinking, why do I feel so good? And at the time, I was a stressed out founder, as we just briefly mentioned. It can be a pretty brutal journey, and yeah, just to have this kind of reset of mental clarity was amazing. And so yeah, really, that's how my journey into Monk began.
Nice. So you got bullied into, so you had this innate curiosity about biohacking. Can you tell me a little bit about it? I think during the pandemics, just to share a bit of my personal journey, I started learning more about it. So I think I came across this gentleman called Dave Asprey, I think, if
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not mistaken, with the bulletproof coffee, and and then I started a journey which goes to a spiritual journey as well, stop drinking alcohol and all of that. But in your case, um, so you had this interest in biohacking, which then led you, into beauty monk, and so, but before that, have you always had let's say an entrepreneurial spirit, or what you've done? Because if I look at your LinkedIn profile, I think you're a copywriter, right? So I'm very curious into like that transition, like from being a copywriter, a creative person. You studied arts, it seems, and now you're an entrepreneur. So what was that journey like? That's where I'm trying to get.
Yeah, so I guess I've always been very creative. I always loved anything that was art, ceramics, or just getting my hands involved in something when I was younger. And I think that entrepreneurial spirit was always there in, typical forms when you're a kid. Like I would find, I don't know, some tree that was full of berries and I'd try and make this berry jam and go and sell it to the neighbors. And God knows what these berries were. Hopefully no one actually got ill. But then I went into advertising marketing. I originally went to Central St. Martin's where I did my art and design foundation. And coming from, I grew up in smaller villages out in the countryside, and I was always the best at art in my school. But suddenly I went to this university where you have people who are the best from, all around the world. And I kind of realized, oh, maybe I'm more distinctly average at art than I thought. But there was something about branding and marketing that always really appealed to me. So anyway, yeah, I ended up going into advertising, marketing, branding, bit of consumer psychology, and I absolutely loved it. And yeah, I ended up becoming a copywriter. So I worked in one half of a creative team, and I loved building brands from scratch. It was just so exciting. Um, but I guess the entrepreneurial side of things started when I had this idea for my first business, which was a health and fitness subscription box. So this was back in the day when, subscription boxes were booming, especially ones in beauty world. But, with my passion at the time, which was very much into health, fitness, and nutrition, I hadn't properly got into biohacking at this point. Um, and yeah, I just had this idea for my first company, and it was almost a bit like a moth in a flame. I was just drawn to it. And there was nothing logical. I didn't really look at it and think, oh, well, this is going to be risky. There's a, huge financial risk of leaving a job and starting this. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I just wanted to bring this thing to life, which has been a theme throughout all of the companies I've started, really, which I think there's been three. I think Monk is my third. Um, so yeah, I think once I got into the entrepreneurial world and became a founder, it all just went from there, really, and one thing kind of eventually led into the other, and I've had two small exits. Um, yeah, and then as I think a fairly similar entry to you into biohacking, I learned about bulletproof coffee, and I remember one friend saying to me, "Gloria, it's way more than just the coffee." And yeah, it just kind of opened up this whole new world, and yeah, I don't know about you, I just find it fascinating.
It is fascinating. I think everything I you know I think the 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 problem in society, in my opinion, and for example, when you look at Evolve today, at e-commerce, just to give you an example, it's full of acronyms. So Mac, API first, and all of that bullshit. When people, like, when you look at the regular Joe, they don't understand. They just want the transformation. Like, how do I go from
Mm,
A to B? But in the industry, and I think that is true for most industries, like, people don't understand the acronyms. And so I look at Evolve more like as as an ecosystem. As I try to have this systemic approach. Like, I believe in ecosystems, and I think it's the same for biohacking. So things are connected. Like, you start learning about uh, the bulletproof coffee, and yeah, that's cool. It's how it got your attention, but then you need to improve your sleep, and then you start realizing that, well, if you don't take care of your sleep, it doesn't really help, like, to be drinking a great coffee. And then you start noticing your patterns, and so that was my journey. And so what you're telling me is really interesting. My journey is more like into, like, how can we create an ecosystem, because that's what I've always done, doing international expansion in the world of commerce and creating something different, which is something that I wanna talk to you about, like creating a category in our space. I think it's very hard, and creating a category in general. I think it's hard because you need to create something different. And that's where I find your background super interesting as a creative person, as a copywriter, because there's always an angle. So there's a lot of testing that is required. Like testing angles, and until you can hit the real punch, but it requires a lot of tests. But Laura, tell me about, just before we talk about creating a category defining product, we have a lot of people in transition in our community, multiple of them. They can be investors. But what would be your perhaps best advice for anyone who's in a transition professionally? Like, we have a lot of former C-level folks. I think I told you this in our first conversation. They knew very well how to represent their companies, but now that they have to do something new, like they sometimes they don't even know where to start. Like how do they tell their story? How they go about telling their story? So, what's your best advice for anyone considering that leap, or in that process, whatever path they're going to choose, whether they're going to be like a professional investors, board members, fractional professionals, creating a portfolio career, or maybe becoming an entrepreneur like yourself. Like what would be your best advice there?
I think life is too short to spend, months, however long, thinking about doing something. I think you just got to do it. Whatever you want to do. I had a day recently which I coined a delusional day. So say for example, for me right now, we're fundraising for Monk, and I just thought, what are the boldest moves I could make right now? And I wrote down
Mhm.
a list of, it was like 10, 20 people that, I have absolutely no business in emailing. It was people like Kevin Hart and Gwyneth Paltrow. And I just got in touch with their teams. And I think sometimes you've got to just completely like emotionally remove yourself from what it is, you're thinking about doing. So you're not holding yourself back and thinking, oh God, well, I can't do that. And just do it and see what happens. And whether it's committing to, okay, these are the 5 bold moves, these are the things I'm going to do this week that's going to get me closer to that. But I think you've just got to put yourself out there and do it. So if you're thinking about going into consulting, right, who are the top companies, or who can you speak to? Who can you get a coffee with? Just make it happen.
Nice, great advice. So, speaking of creating a category defining business, like your Monk is backed by some amazing names. I told you in the first call we had, James Watt, the founder of BrewDog, Anthony Joshua. I had no idea who he was until recently that I watched this Netflix series. And the founder of the Aura Rings, right? So you had them as,
Yes.
some of your early backers there. Tell me about, you're talking about building an amazing network. So what was the process of, you know, um, getting them as investors in your business? I think I watched a small snippet of yours. You didn't even have the product yet. It was more like the the deck or the idea, and then you pitched to Anthony. And so what was that like, getting in touch with these guys, and building that network and getting that seed money for your company?
Yeah, so both AJ and James Watt came in our friends and family round. So yeah, to your point, there was no product. It was just an idea. And,
Yeah.
I'm a founder. I've never built hardware, software, firmware before.
Mhm.
But I think if you have a really strong vision of what you're trying to do, like people want to be involved with cool things. If it's something they resonate with, I think, yeah. But getting in touch with them. So it happened in different ways. I've always thought that network is just one of the most important things you could ever have as a founder, or to be honest, anyone, whatever your role is. And I guess I was fairly lucky. From my previous businesses, I naturally had fairly good networks. Say, for example, with the health and fitness subscription box I mentioned, if each month I'm working with 8 to 10 different companies, I therefore know, 8 to 10 different founders or business owners or just someone in their teams. And I actually went and actively joined a couple of founder network groups. I mean, like Evolve is incredible. Like what a phenomenal community of people. And so I
Thank
already
you.
had a couple of other communities like that. Um, and yeah, it was just a case of emailing people, speaking to people, just putting my deck out there. But it happened in a really interesting way with James, actually, because I remember putting up a picture, it was on Instagram, of a few of my favorite business books. And I went to tag, either the authors of them, and I went to tag Brewdog, and it came up with a suggestion, Brewdog James. And I was like, I don't know, I guess that's the guy. And then we followed each other through that. And he was getting really into health and biohacking and wanted, biohacking tips. And I wanted help with business. So we ended up swapping like business for biohacking tips. And we just built a good friendship from that. And then when I told him about Monk and the idea, it was really before I could finish the sentence. He said, "Do you need money?" And, James became one of my first investors. And then with AJ, it was my kind of chairman at the time. He'd already spoken to his team, in a previous life about a separate deal. And so he just pinged the deck over and just said, "Hey guys, is this of interest?" And, it just turned out that AJ absolutely loves ice baths. His managers were sick of buying bags of ice to put into his bath at home because he, didn't like the look of anything on the market. So it was just a really good fit. Yeah.
Right. So you had them as early backers, and what they have an interest, right? Both in the product and in you as a founder. And tell me about then the process of building a category. So you have the hardware, you have the cold therapy. I mean, I again the cold therapy, uh let's call it treatment, for the lack of the better word. I came across cold therapy right I think in the midst of a pandemic, when I was consuming all of this biohacking stuff. Then I saw, what was the name? What is the name of that guy? Famous guy. Let's go.
Oh, Wim
And
Hof.
yeah, and then I all of a sudden, I'm being impacted by his content on Instagram. And it's quite interesting, right? I think from that time, the pandemic, all of the, I mean, people are drinking less alcohol. It seems, you hear this all over the world. So there, it seems that there is a more elevated, um, consciousness about the topic. And so, uh, while I find it amazing, and I think there's a massive market, why are you building why are you different? What's your perspective on cold plunges and ice baths, so you're just not like anyone else in the market?
Yeah, so I guess my own journey. So when I fell in love with the ice bath that time I told you about, when I just had this amazing clarity, I wanted to do more of it myself. And so I started off buying loads of bags of ice to put into my bath at home. I used, frozen horse water troughs. I learned how to break into Hampstead Heath ponds at night during lockdown, because the ponds were all closed. This is during COVID, and I thought it was just because of COVID. And actually, it turned out that it was because the water was contaminated. So then I ended up getting
Mm,
sick, and I was just like, why is it so hard to do something so good for my health? And at the time,
mhm,
the ice baths on the market, you either had the really high end one, which started around £11,500, which for me was just out of reach, and also I didn't. They were
mhm,
huge; they wouldn't fit in my home. Or you've got like the kind of the pop-up inflatables, and some of them are okay to get started, but you still have to buy loads of ice. And anyways, there was nothing on the market meeting my needs, and I discovered this private Facebook group. And at the time there was 6,000 people in there, which I thought was a lot. I actually looked maybe a month or two ago. There's now 80,000 people in this group just learning how to transform those chest freezers into your own DIY ice baths. And so that for me
mhm,
was like the final straw, because I thought, well, if there's this many people, like clearly there's nothing meeting their needs, I'm going to create it. So that was really what, the thought behind Monk. And then, it really evolved as we started, because I love data, and I wear an aura ring, I wear a whoop, and I realized the bigger problem wasn't just that cold water therapy wasn't that accessible is that people don't know how to use it safely or effectively. So, if you were using it for mental health and someone else is using it for muscle recovery, or someone else is using it for, pre-cooling, for endurance, you're going to use it in a totally different way. But no one really, like, there's no way to educate people on that. And so that for us is where the smart functionality came from, with our, companion app that comes along with the hardware. But from day one, I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. So it's interesting how it just has evolved over time. And it's also really interesting reflecting back, because we were really fortunate in the beginning. We got so much press and we were really positioned as the world's first smart ice bath. But as we've gone along and we've now been in market for, I don't know, 14 months, it turns out that the number one reason people buy Monk is actually because of the aesthetics. They just say it's the most beautiful ice bath, and the smart functionality is still really important, but that's like the supporting layer. So actually, while we thought the number one thing was the smart functionality, it's actually become secondary. So it's just, as you have a product in market, you learn how people use it, what they really love about it, and just kind of pivot and slightly reposition as you go.
And what are the pillars for you, Laura, to build this? Because you guys are raising. I will speak about that round that you're raising. But what are the pillars for you to build Monk into being different? So is it social? Are you leveraging social? I started following you on Instagram, so you clearly eating your own dog food, as they say, right? You have to. But is it other influencers or micro influencers, TikTok? And could you walk me through your thought process around your how you going to market in that sense?
Yeah, I think one thing that's become really clear is being a founder-led brand really
Mhm.
resonates. And that's something, if, I had a friend who, has their own company, I'll be telling them, like, put yourself front and center. You bring so much, credibility and authority. But when it's me, I like to kind of just, sit in the background. And it is actually, my chairman and the board who are like, you've just got to really lean into it. And I know it resonates and it works. So that for us has been really powerful. And yeah, the main channels, I mean, Instagram is definitely been, fantastic for us. I think particularly being such a aesthetic product, people want to be able to see it. So naturally it is just a channel that does quite well for us. Um, Affiliates have started to really work for us. Events are fantastic because it's such a product people want to to physically see it and feel it and experience it. I guess it's like if you were going to buy a car, people want to road test it, right? And I think what's been difficult for us over the years is that we ended up spending about 2.5 years in product development, and I never thought it would take that long. We thought it was going to be nine months, beginning to end, and we'd be in market happy days. And it turns out that hardware is actually quite hard. So when you're trying to sell a product and build a brand and a community when you don't actually have products, it definitely has a lot of challenges. Um, yeah, but it's been an incredible journey.
Speaking of building the product, then what was the main challenge there? Is it the size of the product, or the all the technology that you have embedded into the product? What was it making it work?
Yeah, I would say it was really the integration of hardware and firmware, and so how we had built it as a company. We had two lots of third parties, one that owned the hardware, one that owned the firmware, and that inherently brought a lot of challenges, because when we went through our first production run, we had issues that we hadn't seen before in the prototypes, and trying to identify where that came from was really difficult when you have essentially two teams. And I think it's something that a lot of startups go through in the early days before you really bring that technical resource in house. It can be quite challenging. So while going through it was a really complex time, it cost us a lot of time and money as a startup, neither of which things we really had, but it forced us to actually bring that technical expertise in house earlier. And we're now in a much better position for it. But yeah, I would say hardware, it's different. It is just, it exposes every weak assumption. It's relentless. um yeah, but then equally, there's no better joy than having a physical product when people can see it and feel it and touch it, and you see them have an ice bath for the first time and they have this amazing experience. So yeah, hardware, it's a blessing that comes with a lot of challenges.
I could imagine. And tell me about the rituals that you build. I mean, tell me about the community building. What's how are you building a community and the rituals, and how are you doing this?
Yeah, I think the beauty of cold exposure is that the people that love it really love it. So there's that community there already with people who were so excited to get behind us. Um, and yeah, people typically, once they've done an ice bath, they're not that quiet about it. They want to tell everyone, they want to
Hmm.
post about it on social. And I think one of our strengths, Monk, is the brand and what we stand for. We're building wildly resilient humans, and a lot of what we do is about resilience, and it's about going through hard things and coming out the other side a better person. So actually, the whole positioning it's interesting because essentially we're selling an ice bath, and it's as you said earlier, it's an uncomfortable experience, but the transformation comes out the other side of it. And so people who have been through that are just so passionate about it. And I think particularly with building hardware, when you're going through product development, being able to have people that can really champion you along that, and they're almost supporting us before we'd even found our feet, before we even actually had a product. So community have been so powerful for us. It's also something I don't think we have lent into it enough. And now that we have products, and I'm sure we can talk about this in a bit, but we've now got multiple products as well that reach different parts of our community. I'm really excited to do a lot more events, because it is that in-person experience that you learn so much. It's not just about reaching more people, but but I guess your early community, it's R&D. It's, they teach you the things that you need to build, the things that you shouldn't build. And it's just such an integral part of the journey we've been on.
Nice. We'll speak about the events. I love the whole go-to-market conversation, but again, I run a community for a living,
Yeah.
and I'm curious about if your community is the one that is doing. Do you think today, for example, I believe you have a community when there's actually people you kind of like lose control a little bit. You're not there all the time, if you know what I mean. So people are talking about you, and they're supporting each other, and they are potentially teaching each other on how to use Monk, and giving people inspiration, and for example. Uh, but are you being intentional? Like, do you have a WhatsApp group, or do you have, you're in multiple places, and do you have uh, events where you're doing activations, and people are getting to know you? I'm just trying to understand I'm being selfish, okay? Your process there of building your community and being intentional about it.
Yeah. So interestingly, the other day we had someone reach out they've been an early customer of ours. They've now got multiple of our products, which is amazing. And they asked whether we would ever do like a monk certification program, so they could be like a certified monk ambassador, which is amazing. And it's something, we thought of at the beginning, but it was more like one day that would be nice. But for someone in our community to approach us and ask that it was just such an amazing feeling.
Mhm.
But we are being much more intentional about it. We've just developed a program where we have almost like three different tiers of well, some of them are more like ambassadors, like, you've got the high end, you've got your Anthony Joshua, but also it's our cold creators. So, for example, they will get, discounted monk products, but they'll have to give us a, certain amount of deliverables, like photos and things like that. And we've got people that already host workshops for other people, so they're already educating other people on the cold. And that for us is amazing, because obviously they're taking people through what's often their first ice bath, but in a monk, and that for us is really special. Also interestingly, the first product we launched, our flagship product, is £6,000. So it's not cheap, but compared to the competitors, it's incredibly well positioned.
Mhm.
We've got more fit functionality and things like that. But we had a lot of people, we heard it every week. They'd say, look, I love the brand, I really want one, but it's just out of reach. And that wasn't always financial. It might be that people actually, they had two houses, they were always traveling, having something that's more of a permanent fixture just didn't really fit their lifestyle. And the other thing we realized is that most people that were buying a monk, it was their second product. They already started with one of the the more like an inflatable. So we just thought, well, what if we could also be their first product? So actually, we've recently just brought out our the Monk Nomad, which is designed for on the go. It's made of the same material that you have life rafts and rescue crafts made out of. So when you say inflatable, it makes it sound really cheap, but it's not. It's premium. It's in our monk, like beautiful monk coloring and things like that. And so actually, we listened to our community and made that product for them. Yeah.
Very, very cool, very interesting. So you're leveraging, you're listening to your community to pretty much create your flywheel, hopefully in the future, and like data and hardware. And so you mentioned you wanted to talk about the product, and so you have a different line of products today. You found the product market fit. The most premium one is at 6K, you said, or maybe you have
Yes.
more, right?
Yeah. So we
Can you tell?
started with
Yeah.
that. Yeah, started with that
Mhm.
flagship, which was at £6,000. Then we've bought in that entry level product, which is around 1,000, just under. But the one I'm really excited about is called Cocoon, and that's coming out next year. And I guess just to put it into context, the journey we've been on, I listened to this podcast with, do you know Will Ahmed? He's the founder of Whoop. And
Nope.
this podcast, it was like 3 years of therapy in an hour. It was incredible. He was talking
Right.
about Whoop. He was talking about Whoop's journey, and when they're at our stage, they'd raised like 20 million. I mean, obviously that they're a US company. They just typically raise so
Mhm.
much more. Um,
Yeah.
but no one was buying their products, and they only ever had 3 months runway, and it was really difficult. Even though they had Michael Phelps and these amazing athletes, it just wasn't translating into sales. And he was saying about how hardware founders will say, we're going to sell 100,000 units of our first product, and he said actually it's completely the wrong goal. The purpose of your generation 1 product is just to buy you time to get to generation 2, because your first customers will tell you what needs to change. The only thing you've got to do is survive that period. And that for me was just like, yeah,
Mhm.
therapy. And I realized, oh, we haven't done anything wrong, and we are now working on the generation 2 of that flagship product, as well as bring out this product that's, I think, sits in this interesting white space where it's kind of, it's not that high end luxury all in one, but we've essentially rebuilt the business for global expansion. Because we're a UK based company, which I believe is around 3.5% of the global ice bath market. So it's tiny, but it's our home. We're figuring out the blueprint here so that we can then replicate it in other territories. So early next year, we're going out to the Middle East, and this middle product I mentioned, Cocoon, is also really built for hot climates as well. And then we're also coming to Europe, so you never know. Maybe
Mm.
we'll be coming to you.
Yeah, well, I'm based in Denmark. It's pretty cold here, Denmark, Finland,
Yeah.
and I have some funny stories, but there's definitely a market. People, they go for the cold dips here. There's a culture, so that's important. Tell me
Yes.
about the global expansion then, and why the Middle East. I find it interesting because there's a huge migration of millionaires and billionaires now, and from
Yeah.
the UK for of course, tax reasons and whatnot, from multiple countries into the Middle East, like the UAE being one of them. So
Hmm.
tell me about that part of your, strategy. Why?
Yeah, so we have had a lot of interest from the Middle East over the last couple of years, but we always thought that America would be our next market, just simply because of the size. Everyone always says it's around 5 years ahead of us in terms of health and fitness, but everything's been going on in the US in the last couple of years. US is really US, and there's the tariffs and everything. And actually, I thought the Middle East, there's a really interesting strategic move for us there, because the health, the biohacking market is growing about 26% year on year there. It is booming. Like you say, you've got the millionaire migration. It's just such an interesting market. Obviously, it's a very hot climate, so the need for an ice bath is also much greater. But the market itself over there, there's no real leader in the cold exposure movement, which is really interesting for such an aesthetically driven territory. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. We've got a lot of great strategic partnerships lined up over there. So yeah, I just think it's going to be such a huge unlock for us as a company.
Smart. I love that. Laura, we have one question here from Lais, and she's my wife. So I'm gonna
Ah,
post it and yeah, I'm gonna show it on stage. Let's just see. Just now, very interesting session. I'd love to know if there's any difference between men and women or women in terms of biohacking results and the benefits of taking ice baths.
yes, there is. And this is where I get really excited with Monk because it's the education is such an important part for us. As I mentioned earlier, we need to teach people how to use it safely and effectively. And we have a lot of that kind of education on our app, but absolutely in terms of males and females. So it depends where you're at in terms of your I guess your life cycle. So if you're a female in your menstrual years, how you'll use it throughout your cycle really changes. So just to give you like a really quick overview, during ovulation is a fantastic time for ice baths. That's where if you want to do slightly colder sessions or longer sessions, that is a brilliant time to do it. But as you get later into your luteal phase, so coming up to your menstrual period, that's a good time to taper off because your body is already under a lot of stress. You're much more sensitive to the cold. So yeah, it's just about learning to use it throughout your cycle in a way that, because it's such a fantastic tool for for all kinds of emotional regulation as well as physical benefits, mental health benefits. So it's just knowing how to use it is such a fantastic unlock. Whereas as men typically can just use it consistently, day to day, and typically can also go a lot lower in terms of temperature. As a general rule, females do best around anywhere from like 8 to 14 degrees, so actually fairly high. And a lot of the research is also done around those temperatures. Um, I think one of the things we've really tried to counteract at Monk is the thought that you've got to go colder for longer, and people love to say they're jumping into frozen lakes and they're doing it at 0 degrees, but there's no need. You get all the benefits at higher temperatures. So for, my belief is always minimum effective dose. But yeah, hopefully that gives a little bit of context.
Sweet. So just to make sure that I got it right. So for a man can use it more regularly, and women, the data shows that during ovulation, so pre-menstruation, it would be best because then I mean our temperatures are different, like between men and so during menstruation, you mentioned taper off. So you would say
Yes.
that the data says that you can not use so much. So you shouldn't. Not that you shouldn't, but I mean, you don't take an ice bath because you're already cold enough.
Yeah, exactly. And there was this fascinating study. It was just a pilot study, but they took women who had severe endometriosis and they got them cold plunging for 10 days around ovulation. And within 3 menstrual cycles, the symptoms were almost completely gone, which is crazy because, endometriosis can be such a debilitating condition for people. So, we're just scratching the surface as to, I hope more studies are just going to come out and just, kind of prove how effective this can be.
Laura, we are approaching the end. I would love to talk more. If you have a few more minutes, I have more questions.
Yeah.
I know it's a Christmas day, but yeah, let's speak about you're raising the round now. Hopefully we can have people in Evolve, but also we are live on LinkedIn. So hey everyone, if you're watching this live, uh, Laura and Monk are raising. So let's talk about that, what that opportunity looks like, and yeah, what you're gonna do with the funds and money.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, so we are moving into the Middle East. So we've really proven out the brand and the business in the UK, rebuilt our supply chain, and also built out that product family so that we can reach more people, different price points, and also take more people on their journey from their kind of entry level product right through. Yeah, and so this raise is part of that expansion. I guess just to put it into context today, so in total we have raised 2.8 million, which was part of that friends and family round and then our seed round. And do you know what, we've just been so lucky with the investors we've had today, all individuals. Actually, we've got one family office. but they're people that are just so passionate about what we're building, either because they, completely love ice baths themselves, or they're just so passionate about this category and the technology. Yeah, and we're just really excited now. It feels like we're at that green line. We're at that line ready to go, and yeah, take us from that much loved UK brand into what will eventually become the global world leaders of cold exposure. So yeah, it's a really exciting time for us as a young startup.
Nice. And the question then is like, so the Middle East, check. Um, the question I have is more like, how are you planning, or what's the idea there? Are you going to do more events and more activations, or a bit of social media? And that's the first question. So more like your go-to market, that you, if you have any ideas there that you can share. And then if there's a limit, a time limit where investors can come in, and a minimum, also to invest in the business now.
Yeah. So in terms of our go-to-market, when we're going out to new territories, we're doing that through a distribution-led
Mm,
approach. So we've already got our partner over in the Middle East, who really cover the GCC, but the same with Europe. And I guess we're being opportunistic. So we haven't mapped out the exact territories in Europe we're going to, but let's say, for example, we find the perfect partner who's in Portugal, and actually we thought, oh, maybe we'll go to Germany first. Yeah, we're just going to be opportunistic in terms of what presents itself. And then in terms of, you also asked, like, I guess the channels that have worked. So we are just going to continue, like our whole approach really is to test as many things as we can, find out what works and double down on that. So there's probably a lot of channels that we haven't explored yet that I would love to. For example, podcast advertising. We just haven't explored it yet to date, but we'll be trialing that on a small scale in 2026. But also, yeah, the things we know that really work. So working with affiliates, absolutely doing more events. And what's really exciting actually with the partner out in the Middle East, particularly in the UAE, you've got a lot of events like Dubai Active, events over in Riyadh. So we'll actually have a presence at a lot of them. Yeah, so as I mentioned, this will help with that international expansion. Obviously, part of that will be going into products. A lot of that is also marketing, growth, the team behind it.
mhm.
At the moment, we're a really small team. I actually interviewed someone, it was earlier this year, and they thought we were at about around a 30 to 35 person head count. I was like, we're three, like full time. There's three of us. So we've
Nice,
managed
nice.
to, yeah, we've managed to achieve quite a lot. And I never foresee Monk being a huge team, but just really smart people. Yeah. What I think you asked something else that I haven't mentioned.
Oh,
Just in terms of the round itself.
yeah.
So yeah, we're raising £1 million at a £8.5 million pre-money, minimum check size 20K.
Mhm.
Yeah.
20K pounds, right? We're
Yes.
speaking
Yeah.
pounds.
British
Yes,
pounds.
perfect. Yeah, awesome. That's fantastic. We're speaking, we have many ideas here, but yeah, I think I think my final note, Laura, it's more like about the events, because in your field, like the events can be so fun, you know, like
Hmm.
about uh, going on an ice plunge, ice bath for the first time, and then you can combine it with other things. You don't necessarily need to be at a large conference, but you can make this quite exclusive, and have other people or other companies that complement your the whole wellness aspect or biohacking aspect. And so I find it fascinating, to be honest. And I would love actually to, because we're going to be in Dubai next year, and if we could, and if the stars align, and if it could be in your schedule, just to try and something with people in e-commerce, like say, hey, let's go for
I
a
would
nice bath,
love that. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That would be
different
great.
things,
Yeah,
like
I'm keen. Let's make that happen, because it is amazing. And you know what? One of our core audience segments are what we call high performers. So they are not necessarily just C-suite, but they're, business leaders. They're people that
Mhm,
really
mhm.
care about mental clarity, being top of their game. And almost like myself, like so many people never thought I'm just going to get into an ice bath, it's going to be an enjoyable experience. It's not the thing that's top of their list, but once you actually experience it for the first time, and often that is an event.
Oh, I lost Laura. We lost Laura for just for a little bit. She might be returning soon. I hope. Laura, yes. Uh, I think you're on mute again. And we were speaking of events.
Oh,
Maybe it was the
there we go.
yes. Yeah.
Back on. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah,
You were
where did
speaking
I drop
about
off?
doing events and the type of audience that is attracted to what you do, and yeah.
Yeah, so it was just interesting that actually, so many of our audience are people that, yeah, really care about their profession. They want to be top of their game, but maybe haven't even thought I'll do an ice bath. But when you're at an event and it's paired with something else, whether that's breath work, whether that's just
Mhm.
maybe it's like a completely different, yeah, it's like an e-com summit or something. But when it's there and you do it in a group, and you just have other people doing it with you, that's it's almost like that can be the entry drug, and then people will realize like how transformative it can be. So yes, let's make it happen in Dubai 2026.
Yes, let's do it. It's a deal. We'll find a date and we'll do it.
Perfect.
Very cool. Laura, this was amazing. Yeah, if people want to know more about you and Monk, what's the best way? I'm going to yeah, we'll speak in private, but just because we're live on LinkedIn, so what's the best way for people to get in touch?
Either, yeah, drop me a DM on LinkedIn. My inbox is open. Or if you've, yeah, got my email, I don't know whether I'm going to put it out live on LinkedIn. Drop me a DM on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way.
Fantastic. All right, ladies and gents, this was Laura Fullerton, founder of Monk. Laura, thanks very much. I'll catch you in private.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. All right, so I'm pausing the session.